So to stiffen up the chicken tractor, took some conduit here. It looks like 3/4. Something that I had from a barn tear down. And I cut a slot in it with the grinder. And it's just big enough for a part of the fencing to go in. And then what I'll do is clamp it down on it, maybe put a tack or two on it. As you can see, got one side kind of worked in there. I just took a pry bar. I took some of the wires off that were close just so I had ability to pry it. And then instead of going up with a pry bar, I went to the side and pried it out enough to get this side in. That side's already in. And that took the curve out of there. I might put 2 more in. This one was right in the center. That stiffened up the top pretty good. Probably not necessary, but I did have the materials, so might as well. Here's the other side before I clamped it down. This is after I clamped it down. I got all the top structures in. Just put one every 3 foot in the 12-foot span. And I got this bottom one in. It's in the middle. I'm kind of curious if I should put it lower, higher, on the ground. If I put it on the ground, their feet might get trapped. Don't want to break any chicken's legs. So I'm going to make smaller corner pieces to help brace the corners. You got to pound them flatter so they're easier to bend. Stick a piece of scrap in like so, and then when you go to pound, it doesn't completely flatten it out. It gives you a little space, and then plus you can pry it open. So now I got to pound it flat on both sides. Then you can just stick a pry bar in there and pry it open, or use the old fence scrap piece to pry it open. So I found when I went to put it in at an angle that it, when I flattened it out, it didn't quite fit in between the 2 inches. So I just cut out about a 1/4 inch on each side. Let's do this side yet. Here it is in place. I'm gonna experiment with a smaller one as well. It did stiffen it up quite a bit. So I didn't have a piece of conduit long enough to span the 12 feet since these are 10-foot pieces. So I had to splice 2 together. And to do that, I just took a bigger piece of conduit, slid it inside of it, got a good 3.5 inches, 3.25 inch on each side of the pipe, and then I'm screwing them together with these self-tapping screws. I've broken a few now, but these should work pretty well. Key to not breaking them is not let it spin. You gotta know when to stop. I think the screws are just a tad bit too long. And you can see what it is. Every couple inches I just wired the conduit pipe to the bottom of the fence, and this will keep it rigid and hopefully will keep the bottom from bending too much. The problem is this is a relatively flat surface I'm working on, but in the pasture it's not always going to be flat, and that's part of the predator apron will help prevent there from being gaps underneath the chicken tractor. But when you got this amount of length, there's always going to be a little bit of unevenness, and this will help prevent the bottom from getting too bent. At least that's the plan. On the corners, I just cut a bigger gap, give it some space, and then I bent them over to stick some conduit there. And I put a couple screws, some sheet metal screws. Make it a little easier on the screws than just doing a pilot hole. And taking a couple of these Tech screws. Number 12s, 1.5 inch, 5/16. And then of course, when you drill these, going into a round surface, so it's pretty easy to get the screw to go kittywampus. Getting the key, so know when to stop, keep from breaking the head. Went around and tack welded some of the seams. It's probably way overkill. All them wires would probably do all the work anyway, but that was a good measure. I don't want this to be as low maintenance as possible. Might as well spend the time and get it built right in the shop instead of trying to drag it up to the shop full of chickens to get it fixed. So I just tied this rope on the front of it for the door side. And this will be how I move it around, at least to get it out of the shop.